There is a moment in almost every confrontation when the other person is waiting for you to react. They say something provocative, make a subtle insult, question your intelligence, challenge your authority, or deliberately create tension. And then they watch. They are not always listening to your words. They are studying your reaction. Do you become defensive? Do you start explaining yourself? Do you raise your voice? Do you rush to prove that they are wrong? Do you become emotional because the moment you react automatically, you have given them information? And information is power. This is one of the most important psychological principles you can understand if you want to become difficult to manipulate. Never allow another person to dictate your emotional state simply by pressing a button. Most people live as if their emotions are controlled by the outside world. Someone praises them and they feel valuable. Someone criticizes them and they feel small. Someone ignores them and they become anxious. Someone challenges them and they immediately feel the need to defend themselves. Their emotional state is constantly being negotiated by other people. That is a dangerous way to live. Imagine someone walks into a room and insults you. The instinctive response is to fight back. You want to demonstrate that you are not weak. You want to make sure everyone understands that you will not tolerate disrespect, but ask yourself something more useful. Why are you allowing this person to determine what you do next? If they insult you and you instantly become angry, they have successfully controlled you without touching you. They didn't need authority. They didn't need evidence. They didn't need a position of power. They simply pushed the right psychological button. Real composure begins when you create a space between what happens and how you respond. That space may last only a few seconds, but psychologically, it is enormous. Instead of reacting, pause, look, listen, let the emotion rise without immediately obeying it. This is not weakness. It is the beginning of self-command. There is a profound difference between having an emotion and allowing that emotion to make your decisions. Anger can appear without becoming your strategy. Fear can appear without becoming your behavior. Disappointment can appear without becoming your words. The disciplined person does not necessarily feel less than everyone else. They simply reveal less of what they feel when revealing it would give another person leverage. Think about how much people communicate without realizing it. A clenched jaw can reveal frustration. A rushed response can reveal insecurity. Excessive explanation can reveal desperation for approval. Nervous laughter can reveal discomfort. Constantly checking whether someone agrees can reveal dependence. People often imagine that power comes from speaking with confidence, but sometimes power comes from refusing to reveal what another person is trying to extract from you. Suppose someone makes an accusation against you that is completely unfair. Your instinct may be to immediately explain every detail. You provide evidence, you defend your intentions, you tell them what really happened, you try to force them to understand. But the more desperate you become to prove yourself, the more psychological importance you give to their judgment. Sometimes the strongest response is not an elaborate defense. It is composure. You do not need to answer every accusation immediately. You do not need to correct every misunderstanding. You do not need to win every argument. This does not mean accepting falsehood or allowing genuine mistreatment. It means choosing your response rather than surrendering that choice to someone else's provocation. That distinction is crucial. Silence is not automatically powerful. Silence used from fear is still fear. Silence used from resentment is still resentment. The power comes from intentionality. You remain silent because you have decided that speaking would not improve the situation. You pause because you are gathering information. You refuse to react because you understand that an impulsive response would reveal more than you want to reveal. Now notice what happens psychologically when you stop reacting so quickly. the other person becomes uncertain. They expected resistance, they expected anger, they expected an explanation. Instead, they encounter calm. And uncertainty changes the dynamic. A person who cannot predict your emotional response cannot easily manipulate it. This is why emotional discipline is so valuable in difficult relationships, negotiations, conflicts, and competitive environments. Manipulation often depends on predictability. If someone knows exactly what will make you angry, they know how to control your attention. If they know exactly what criticism will make you defensive, they know where to attack. If they know you cannot tolerate being ignored, they know they can control you through withdrawal. If they know you desperately need approval, they know they can make you work for it. Your vulnerabilities become levers. The objective is not to become emotionless. That is neither realistic nor desirable. The objective is to become less predictable in the moments when predictability can be used against you. You begin by observing yourself. What insults trigger you? What kind of criticism makes you defensive? What behavior makes you desperate for an explanation? When do you feel compelled to prove your worth? These moments are psychological maps. They reveal where your emotional freedom is weakest, and once you identify those weaknesses, you can begin reclaiming them. The next time someone provokes you, do something radically simple. Do not answer immediately. Take a breath. Let the silence exist. Ask yourself, what is this person trying to make me feel? What response are they expecting from me? What happens if I refuse to give them that response? Those questions transform you from a participant in the emotional drama into an observer of it. And observation creates distance. Distance creates choice. Choice creates power. This is why some people seem extraordinarily difficult to intimidate. It is not necessarily because they are stronger, smarter, or more aggressive. It is because they do not hand their emotional steering wheel to everyone who enters the room. They understand something most people learn only after years of unnecessary conflict. You cannot control what other people say, but you can control what their words are allowed to make you do. And once you master that, you begin to see something even more interesting. When you stop spending all your energy reacting, you have more energy available for watching. You begin noticing patterns. You notice who becomes uncomfortable when challenged. You notice who talks too much when nervous. You notice who needs constant validation. You notice who becomes aggressive when they lose control. You notice who tries to provoke you because they need emotional dominance. And this leads naturally to the next level of psychological intelligence, learning to observe people so carefully that they reveal themselves without realizing they are doing it. Because the greatest advantage is not always knowing what to say. Sometimes it is knowing when not to say anything at all. Control your reaction, and you control the doorway through which others enter your mind. Once you learn to control your reactions, something remarkable begins to happen. You start seeing people differently. Before, you were inside the interaction. You were defending yourself, explaining yourself, trying to be understood, trying to win, trying to make the other person recognize your value. Now you can step back, you can watch, and when you watch carefully, people reveal far more than they intend to reveal. This is one of the most overlooked forms of psychological power, allowing people to expose themselves through their own behavior. Most people are so eager to speak that they rarely notice what is happening around them. They enter a conversation with a conclusion already formed. They listen only long enough to prepare their next response. They are thinking about what they will say, how they will appear, whether they are being respected, and whether they are winning. But the strategic mind operates differently. It listens for patterns. It watches for contradictions. It notices changes in behavior. It pays attention to what happens when someone does not get what they want. Because character is rarely revealed when everything goes according to plan, character appears under pressure. Watch someone when they are told no. Watch them when they lose an argument. Watch them when someone else receives attention. Watch them when they encounter a person they cannot impress. Watch them when they believe nobody important is watching. These moments contain information. A person can carefully construct an image with words. They can describe themselves as confident, generous, loyal, honest, intelligent, or disciplined. But behavior is often a more reliable source of information than self-description. Someone may tell you they respect boundaries while constantly testing yours. Someone may tell you they value honesty while changing their story whenever the truth becomes inconvenient. Someone may claim they do not care about status while constantly comparing themselves to people above them. Someone may insist that they are calm while becoming hostile whenever they lose control. Do not become obsessed with exposing these contradictions. Simply notice them. That distinction matters. The goal is not to become suspicious of everyone. It is to become attentive. There is a difference between paranoia and observation. Paranoia assumes hidden motives without evidence. Observation waits for patterns. This is where silence becomes particularly powerful. When you stop filling every empty moment with words, other people often begin filling it for you. A pause can make someone uncomfortable. They may continue talking. They may explain more than necessary. They may reveal what they were actually thinking. They may contradict themselves. They may offer information you never requested. Why? Because human beings often feel compelled to reduce uncertainty. When silence appears, many people instinctively try to remove it. They talk to restore comfort, and this is why the person who can tolerate silence often gains an unusual advantage. Imagine you ask someone a simple question. What happened? Then you stop talking. You do not immediately suggest an answer. You do not accuse them. You do not fill the silence. You simply wait. They may give you a short answer. Wait, they may elaborate. Wait, eventually, they may begin explaining things you never asked about. This is not a trick. It is simply what happens when you stop interfering with the natural flow of information. The more you observe, the more you begin to understand that people communicate through more than language. Timing communicates, attention communicates, consistency communicates, avoidance communicates, body language communicates. What someone repeatedly does is often more revealing than what they occasionally say. But there is another important principle here. Do not judge people by isolated moments. Anyone can have a bad day. Anyone can become nervous. Anyone can contradict themselves once. The intelligent observer looks for repetition. One event is an incident. A repeated behavior is a pattern. A pattern is information. Suppose someone constantly interrupts you. Once may mean excitement. Twice may mean poor awareness. But if they repeatedly interrupt whenever you speak about something important, you may be observing a deeper behavioral pattern. Perhaps they need control. Perhaps they dislike not being the center of attention. Perhaps they feel threatened by your confidence. You do not need to announce your interpretation. You simply adjust your behavior based on what you observe. That is a major psychological shift. You stop trying to change everyone. You start deciding who deserves access to you. This is where many people waste enormous amounts of energy. They recognize someone's behavior is unhealthy, but instead of adjusting their own boundaries, they spend months trying to convince that person to behave differently. They explain, they argue, they plead, they threaten, they forgive. Then they repeat the cycle. The observer takes a different approach. He watches what people consistently do, accepts the information, and makes decisions accordingly. If someone repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, you do not need another 100 explanations. You have data. If someone repeatedly betrays confidence, you do not need to discover their secret intentions. You have data. If someone consistently supports you when there is nothing to gain, you also have data. Observation is not only about detecting danger, it is about recognizing character, and this is where psychological intelligence becomes much more sophisticated. You begin asking yourself not merely, what is this person saying? You ask, what does this person consistently reward? What do they pursue? What makes them jealous? What makes them insecure? What kind of attention do they crave? What happens when they lose status? What happens when someone else succeeds? What do they do when nobody is watching? These questions reveal the architecture behind behavior. And once you understand that architecture, you become less easily deceived by appearances. You do not need to insult anyone. You do not need to expose them publicly. You do not need to demonstrate that you are smarter. In fact, one of the most powerful things you can do is allow people to believe they are simply having an ordinary conversation with you, while you are quietly learning how they operate. This does not mean manipulating people. It means refusing to be manipulated by your own assumptions. You observe before you conclude, you listen before you judge, you gather patterns before you make decisions. And perhaps most importantly, you stop needing every person to reveal themselves immediately. Time is one of the greatest psychological filters. Give people enough time, and consistency becomes difficult to fake. Someone can perform confidence for an afternoon. They can perform kindness for a week. They can perform loyalty when circumstances are favorable. But eventually, pressure reveals priorities. Eventually, incentives reveal motives. Eventually, repeated choices reveal character. Your job is not to force that revelation. Your job is to notice it. And this connects directly to the next stage of psychological power. Once you can control your reactions and observe others without becoming emotionally entangled, you become harder to predict. And predictability is one of the greatest sources of leverage other people can have over you. If they know exactly how you will respond, they can plan around you. If they know what will anger you, they can provoke you. If they know what will make you desperate, they can withhold it. But when you become calm, observant, and selective in your responses, that leverage begins to disappear. You no longer need to announce your strategy. You simply move with awareness. The world becomes less about proving who is right and more about understanding what is actually happening. That is the quiet advantage of observation. You do not need to speak more. You need to see more. And once you have learned to control your reactions and observe people without immediately judging them, you arrive at the third and perhaps most misunderstood level of psychological power, becoming difficult to predict. Think about what happens when people know exactly how you will behave. They know what will make you angry. They know what will make you apologize. They know what will make you chase them. They know what will make you explain yourself. They know what will make you seek their approval. At that point, they do not need to control you directly. They simply need to press the right psychological button. Predictability creates leverage. This is why emotional independence is so important. If your behavior is determined by whatever another person does, then they have influence over you even when they say nothing. Their approval can make you confident. Their rejection can make you desperate. Their silence can make you anxious. Their criticism can make you defensive. You become a puppet without realizing there is a string. The solution is not to become cold or cruel. The solution is to stop allowing other people's behavior to automatically determine your behavior. You need to develop the ability to choose. Someone is kind to you. You appreciate it, but you do not become dependent on it. Someone ignores you. You notice it, but you do not chase them. Someone insults you. You register it, but you do not immediately retaliate. Someone praises you. You accept it, but you do not build your identity around it. This is psychological independence. And psychological independence changes the way people experience your presence. When you are desperate for approval, people can feel it. You may think you are hiding it, but desperation has a language of its own. You respond too quickly. You agree too easily. You explain too much. You tolerate behavior you secretly resent. You constantly check whether someone is pleased with you. And slowly, without realizing it, you teach people that your boundaries can be negotiated. But when you become comfortable with your own decisions, something changes. You can say no without giving a 20-minute explanation. You can leave a conversation without needing the last word. You can walk away from disrespect without creating a dramatic scene. You can allow someone to misunderstand you without immediately chasing them down to correct their opinion. This is where many people misunderstand confidence. They think confidence means dominating the room. It often means something much quieter. Confidence is being able to remain yourself when the room does not approve of you. That is a much harder form of strength. Anyone can act powerful when everyone agrees with them. The real test comes when someone challenges you. Can you remain composed? Can you listen without becoming defensive? Can you disagree without becoming hostile? Can you walk away without needing revenge? Can you maintain your standards even when doing so costs you someone's approval? These are the moments that reveal whether your confidence is real, and this is why boundaries matter. A boundary is not a speech. It is not a threat. It is not an attempt to control another person's behavior. A boundary is a decision about what you will do. If someone repeatedly speaks to you disrespectfully, you do not necessarily need to convince them to become respectful. You decide what access they will have to you. If someone repeatedly wastes your time, you stop making yourself endlessly available. If someone repeatedly violates your trust, you become more selective about what you share. The key is consistency. A boundary that changes every time someone pressures you is not really a boundary. It is a negotiation. And people quickly learn where your limits actually are. This is why you should never announce a boundary that you are unwilling to enforce. Do not threaten consequences simply to sound powerful. Quietly make the adjustment. Your actions should carry more weight than your declarations. This creates something extremely valuable: credibility. When people discover that your words and actions align, they begin to understand that you cannot be easily pushed. You are not threatening, you are simply consistent. And consistency combined with unpredictability creates an unusual kind of presence. People know your principles, but they do not know exactly how you will respond in every situation. They know you value respect, but they cannot provoke you into losing control. They know you have boundaries, but they cannot manipulate you into abandoning them. They know you care, but they cannot use your compassion as an excuse to exploit you. That balance is powerful, but there is another dimension to unpredictability that is often overlooked. You do not need to reveal every plan. You do not need to announce every goal. You do not need to tell everyone what you are building. The more information you give people about your intentions, the more opportunities they have to interfere, discourage, criticize, or manipulate. Sometimes silence protects your momentum. Work quietly, improve quietly, build quietly, let results introduce you. This does not mean becoming secretive about everything. It means understanding that not everyone deserves access to your internal world. Your ambitions are valuable. Your vulnerabilities are valuable. Your plans are valuable. Your attention is valuable. Treat them accordingly. There is a strange psychological effect that happens when you stop explaining yourself constantly. People begin filling in the blanks. Some will assume you are confident. Some will assume you are distant. Some will become curious. Some will even project their own fears onto your silence. You cannot control what they imagine. And you do not need to. Your responsibility is not to manage every person's perception of you. That is an exhausting game with no possible victory. There will always be someone who misunderstands you, someone who dislikes you, someone who interprets your silence incorrectly, someone who thinks your boundaries are arrogance. If you spend your life correcting every interpretation, you will never have enough time to live your own life. This is where the philosophy of detachment becomes essential. You can care about people without needing their approval. You can listen to criticism without allowing it to define you. You can accept rejection without turning it into a judgment of your worth. You can lose someone's attention without losing yourself. That is freedom, and perhaps this is the deepest lesson behind the entire idea of outsmarting someone without saying a word. The objective is not to defeat everyone. It is not to manipulate everyone. It is not to walk into every room thinking about how to gain psychological superiority. That mindset still makes you dependent on other people. True power is quieter. You control yourself. You observe carefully. You choose your responses. You protect your attention. You maintain your boundaries. And you refuse to give unnecessary access to your emotions, plans, and weaknesses. At that point, you become difficult to manipulate because there is less for manipulation to grab. People can criticize you, you remain grounded. They can provoke you, you remain composed. They can ignore you. You continue moving. They can misunderstand you. You do not collapse into explanation. They can attempt to pressure you. You simply make your decision, and suddenly something becomes clear. You were never required to win every argument. You were never required to have the final word. You were never required to prove that you were stronger. Your greatest advantage was always the ability to remain in command of yourself, because the person who controls their emotions does not need to control everyone else. The person who observes carefully does not need to chase information, and the person who is comfortable walking away does not need to beg for respect. So, the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember the 3 principles. Control your reaction, observe their behavior, and remain unpredictable in the sense that your actions come from principle rather than pressure. Do not react because someone expects a reaction. Do not speak because silence makes you uncomfortable. Do not explain because someone demands access to your reasoning. Speak when speaking serves a purpose. Act when action serves a purpose, and remain silent when silence protects your peace, your dignity, or your strategy. The world is full of people trying to pull attention, emotion, and validation from one another. You do not have to participate in every psychological battle you are invited into. Sometimes the smartest move is to step back, watch, think, choose, then move, because the ultimate form of psychological power is not making other people afraid of you. It is becoming so disciplined that they cannot easily make you betray yourself.